Let's not end this, but let's definitely open up the floor to questions. I'm sure that everybody's got a lot of questions. What we're going to do is take 2 or 3 questions at a time, so that we keep the flow up, right? And who's got a question?
My name is Mario Caro. I should preface this by saying that I will be coming to Tel Aviv tomorrow. Part of what I do is I run a nonprofit it's a network of art residencies around the world, and we're planning a meeting in 2014 in Tel Aviv, focusing on social practice art and residencies, that relationship. What I'm confused about, so I'm trying to learn as much about what's happening on the ground there. What I'm confused about is what part of the boycott is it that you observe? What is your understanding of how to enact the boycott? I mean, you've given us sort of the exceptions, but where is it that you actually enact the boycott that you saw?
For example, if I were today asked by the Hebrew University to come and, as a Palestinian, come and teach a course on the history of art from the Arab world, I would refuse, simply. A, because the Hebrew University is a state-sponsored university, and I cannot act like everything is normalized and there is no political situation on the ground, and there are a lot of political dealings that are in my face, that I need to cross a checkpoint, that I need a military permit to actually come into Jerusalem and therefore participate in the university and teach in the university. That's an unacceptable request, and that is something I would call to boycott, personally. Another version, which Eyal alluded to, which is the fact that there are these post-Oslo collaborative moments where they tell you about residencies or projects where they want to bring Israeli and Palestinian artists together in some retreat somewhere. Why? What's the purpose of that? And they do this one-time thing, and that's it. And you see, they're all very equal and everything's okay together. No, it's not. And people have to deal with circumstances before they really understand how this community starts to play out. You know, I've heard a lot of things about, you know, we would love to bring Israelis and Palestinians in this exhibition together. What's the purpose of an exhibition of Israeli artists and Palestinians that do not interact? And there's no equal footing and grounds for their interaction. You know, and there's a reality of an occupation happening, and you making that exhibition. How does it start? Where's the logic? These are the really tough questions that the boycott asks. And these are things that we have to say no to. That's the only, let's say, that's the only zone that Palestinians are still allowed, and Arabs, to say no, thank you. That's where I draw the line. I can probably, you know, I have to deal militarily, I have to deal economically, etc. There are much more important, like, circumstantial things that make me have to deal with the Israelis on that front, but that I can say no to. And it's my right.
Sure, next question over there.
Sorry, but what you call the boycott is implication of micropolitics. It seems that you are talking about a contextual situation which is affecting the whole political field, not only the Palestinian and Israeli situation. I think it could be applied to Latin America as well in some situations, and even in the United States, even with the discussion about, you know, weapons and, you know, the capacity to use it in a civil way.
I mean, these are all case studies for, you know, hopefully, if you want this idea of self-determination, right? The boycott is a tool, a vehicle where you have the right to say, for yourself, I have the autonomy. It gives you the tool and power to actually enact your own political voice. So that is definitely what a boycott enables, and it becomes I mean, there was the case of South Africa before us. It's a very successful case. This is the learning curve. You know, how are you able to create your own voice and enact it politically. I don't know if you recently heard about this fantastic initiative of Bab al-Shams, which is a group of Palestinians, around 50, that decide to encamp, there's E1, I don't know if you heard about the settlement that they're planning to build, which is it's a very dangerous part of connecting East Jerusalem to the rest of Ma'ali Adumim, the settlement in Israel, which would absolutely create a discontinuity on the land, on the ground, in Jerusalem for the Palestinians. It's a disaster. And no, not in any time were the Israelis approaching that piece of territory. Now they've decided that they wanted to actually build on it, which is catastrophic. It's really catastrophic to build a settlement on that piece of land and juncture, and in this time. So the Palestinians decided, for the very first time, which I think is brilliant, to take things on their own hand, and in a non-violent way, they decided to build their own encampment of tents and so forth inside the territory of E1, which is connected to a Palestinian village. And they called it Bab al-Shams, based on a Palestinian novel by Ilyas Khouri about this idea of exile and reappropriation. So it was this fantastic motivational, we don't have to resort to, and it's very interesting, but it's the same logic that is also within Israeli society itself, with the Zionist dream of taking things in your own hand, finding your own motivation and building your own place in your own country. So we are learning also from our own neighbors, right? And it's an interesting way to reverse it.
Reem, I wondered, because you're so eloquent about this boycott that you wish that you had spoken of earlier, but now, besides tonight, have you done anything or written anyone or communicated to, say, the Egyptian group there?
I am hoping that we would write a statement after this event, and this event is recorded, as you can tell, and we're hoping to streamline it on video so that it'll be available on a larger front. And we would write a statement, hopefully, maybe between a collaboration with ArtIs and probably maybe the new museum, and get it online as well and disseminate it.
Hi, my name is Izar Patkin, and just to kind of clarify where I'm standing politically on all this, most of the meetings for the Geneva Initiative in the East Coast of the United States happened in my studio for many, many years, and I have many problems with interpretations of boycotts and all that. But I have to say, I'm very confused from your presentation, both of you. What does any of this have to do with art? Now, I have collaborated. I just did a big show at the Tel Aviv Museum. The heart of it was a collaboration with a Kashmiri Muslim poet. His name is Aga Shahid Ali. The encounter between us produced a lot of understanding for both of us as to the cultural metaphor and structures in which our ideas, and both artistically, poetically, in many, many ways, operate, and we found together new ways of presenting our cultures with as somewhat in somewhat collaborative way, or I should take the word somewhat out. It's very collaborative. So what I'm asking is, I heard you talk about your goodwill. I accept it all. I like the things that you did to create meeting points. I like the idea of community and all that. But I didn't hear one word on what kind of art was produced. What came out of it? Either as an object or metaphor.
Well, it's a question that I really, sometimes when you do this kind of projects, you see everybody's asking, okay, so what's the connection to art? I mean, I think for us it's quite obvious. It goes really to the foundations of this project, and it's different things came out of it. But I don't want to make this kind of separation between objects and images and the community and a network that came out of it. Okay, it's a different. I think it's art and it's connected to art because it's basically what we were talking, I think, in both projects, was enabled through art. Okay, art was
Okay,
whatever.
absolutely, don't separate, but what?
No, I'm sorry, we just, due to also the limitation of our time,
Yeah.
there
Yeah,
was
we
no
didn't
way
speak-
that we can actually discuss all of the art project that happened, but there were many. For
Yeah.
example, I'm just gonna give you examples.
I'm curious.
You know, of course you're
I
curious,
even
you're
brought
right.
some videos to show you, but
Yeah, but it's, really, I mean, it's impossible to be able to.
Interactive.
For example, I don't know if you know about Peter Friedel's project that he did in Documenta 11, which was the big giraffe. We just skipped a very quick image. Okay, that was liminal spaces.
Okay, great.
Okay, so just to, in terms of if you
this
want
is liminal
objects.
space.
Yael Bartana's trilogy, the start of her project about the Jewish Renaissance movement that has a calling for the Jewish people to return to Poland. The start of that rumination of her project started with liminal spaces, and then ended with, a fantastic trilogy that she collaborated also again with Galit Eilat and showed it at the Polish Pavilion in Venice 2 years ago. There are many. I mean, the cases of people who have continuously done projects, come back to many of us, kept us involved, has happened from that period of time. We're not saying that we didn't do art.
No, and
we did a
also-
lot of art.
Also, at some point, liminal spaces became a framework that enables artists to come, to do research, to produce new works. So many art projects emerged out of this. And it's the same in what we're doing, of course, in Jesse Cohen. It's just that we didn't have enough time to show everything here. And also, I think the focus was more about how we work together, what were the conditions that enable us to work together. That was more the focus of
And
this
I
project.
have to say I'm proud of these because I'm one who believes that art is, and this is due to also my background, which is, kind of excavating the history of modern and contemporary art in the Middle East for the past 100 years. And there's not a lot said about that. Sorry, I just want to finish my idea, which is basically art becomes a witness for our times.
Absolutely.
This is a material witness of our times, and this is important for us, so we're not dismissing
I
that
have
at
no
all.
quarrel with that, but I just think it would have been more effective if you told us what you did, so then we would know. This was like political talk,
Next question.
Okay, first of
After
all,
you
it's
have
a
the-
fascinating presentation. I just have a question about the boycott because, first of all, I was at the Creative Times Summit and I was very upset that they boycotted, especially the Center for Digital Art. And afterwards, I spoke to some of the presenters and I told them that Galit actually has a bullet in her knee because she went to stand against she went to protest against the Berlin Wall and also, but I just think. Don't you think it's a bit more effective? For instance, you gave the example of not going to teach at a university. I think as an Israeli, I can tell you that the biggest problem in Israel is just ignorance. People are so ignorant about Palestinians. And don't you think that if you would have gone to give a course like that, for instance, without having any kind of just like be able to teach whatever you wanted. Don't you think that would be much more effective?
I can't. I
No,
mean, I can't deal with
also-
the idea that I have to do that and ask for a military checkpoint and cross a checkpoint. You're asking a lot from me.
But
To
also,
like educate
in
and
other countries.
I have to say one thing. I think it is the responsibility of the Israeli society itself to do that. And that's where I champion these people. And I think that's their
So do
role.
I, because they put light on something that they're one of the few people that really show, and this connected a lot of people.
I think
Before,
there
I
are-
remember when the digital art lab started, and it was just all beginning, and they were showing art from the Palestinian territory, and it was just, wow, we didn't even, I didn't even do the army, so I really didn't know a lot of things, and
But I think that also you don't necessarily have to look at the boycott as something that blocks knowledge or blocks. On the contrary, I mean, when it's practiced in let's say in a responsible way, it's a tool also to raise awareness. It's a tool to create a debate. Okay, it's not necessarily blocking what the. Okay, so it's not only the case of whether you come and you speak in Israel. That's not the way the way to create knowledge. You know, that you have other ways, but if you look at the boycott and I think that's basically what it is. It's a tool to raise awareness. It's a tool to raise awareness outside of Israel and also inside of Israel. But
I mean, I would agree to like boycotting Israeli products or things like that, but not.
We need to give voice to a lot of people in this room. We gotta move on, sorry. I know what you're saying is really important. Let's talk about it after over a glass of wine.
My name is Danon. My name is Danon. I would like to say that years ago, a number of years ago, I and a number of my friends a number of years ago, through our foundation and supporting this event tonight, created a website, The Arts from the Islamic World. And the Islamic world includes Israel, includes all the countries, and we gave that website to CUNY, which is the big university in New York, the Queens Division. And they have a number of Islamic scholars. They're managing that website. And the largest collector in the world of Islamic art, historically, is David Krillin, a Jew, an immigrant to England, and this is work, the Islamic world, includes Israel, includes the whole area. He has created that many books of Islamic art going back. You know all about David Krillin and his work. And I really believe that art that comes here. And I believe Jews, Arabs, and all religions.
There are Jews who are Arabs.
Yeah.
Very
Yes. So the bottom line is, art is a universal heart connection. It is not something to have political wars. It's a heart connection. The art speaks for itself. It speaks for humanity. It speaks for passion. It speaks for human rights. And let's concentrate, in my mind, on the beauty and majesty of the art, bringing all people together as one.
Here, here.
Next question.
Hello, my name is Bettina. I'm a student at Fashion Institute Technology. I'm studying graphic design. And some of my work is political art, my personal work. And some of what you guys were saying, it sounds like what SVA has been just started doing. Design for Social Innovation. It's a program that has just started. And I've been interested in that program. It's a master's program. And it's not so much focused on art itself. It's mostly focused on, coming together, trying to create not only political art, networking, and everything your guys are doing. And I would like you to look into that too, because it's one of the things that they've been focusing on, and just not just design, not just the work, and just trying to come up with ideas. And so it seems like that's it sounds like what it is. Now, to go beyond what she said in regards to not speaking at a school. Now, do you feel that you may be restricted by the government, the Israel government, that even though, you are going through these checkpoints that have been implemented, but the fact that you maybe, you feel that there are certain things that they may, block you from saying certain things. Do you feel that, or is that?
No, I want them to end the occupation.
Mel, and then in front.
Well, I just want to say I thought there was an incredible artwork that was created in what you did. I just first time I heard about it, a little bit out of it. But you have a transmission from both sides, transgress a physical barrier, the wall, and a psychological, cultural, racial barrier. And I think that we're talking about also us redefining this term ourselves, that we say we got to go beyond occupation, we have to go beyond the definitions that we have also limited in terms of what we call art. Sometimes there's actions that are quite profound, that complies with what we should consider the artworks. And I just thought something.
Yeah, I mean, I second that because I remember even as a learning curve in terms of like the terminology of what this art is, I was involved with an art project by an artist, a Palestinian artist called Khalil Rabah, which really learned from liminal spaces. And actually we involved liminal spaces during the second Riwaq biennial that happened in Palestine. And the idea of this biennial that took place under the title of Riwaq, which is an institute in Palestine that does architectural renovation out of all things, right? Is that the biennial is the art. The biennial is the artist idea and project. And it's a social interventionist project that took liminal spaces and took all of these tools and did tours. There was no exhibition. You know? That was an active, living art. And a moment for me to first encounter what that kind of dynamism can be in terms of an art project. Now, all the documentation is there about that biennial. It exists. But it is in itself an art project on its own terms. Khalil actually will be showing now in Efflux soon. He's opening a solo show soon. So, I mean, he's created all of these structures of imaginative that are based on actions, and they're equally important. So yes, there is, if you want the product of artistic work, some that is material, some is video, but this entire endeavor definitely merits this idea that it is art, and we are looking at thinking about the art's conditions that are very important, that are in relation to answering to social and political needs. First and foremost, I mean, you know, there are needs in our societies that need to be addressed, and that's the important moment where art needs to be cultivated. I gave the sort of metaphor of Bab al-Shams because I think of it as an art project in politics. It's fascinating to think beyond your box. What is art? It's thinking beyond the box, aesthetically, harnessing creativity to make a statement that will live across time, right? And you have the material documentation that will survive it. So that's the important thing.
Yeah, I think it's also, you're using your creativity, but you don't have to use it necessarily. I mean, you can use it, of course, to create your images and your object, but not necessarily. And it's as long as it's a creative process, and you use it in order to mobilize people, to bring people together, to do whatever you like, to create a community, and you need your creativity to do that. So that's why I was saying that we cannot make this definition. Differences between the different types of outcomes, because they are all products of this of art in a way. For us, it's very, for us in liminal spaces, but also in what we are doing now, it's very, very clear. You can have a project that ends up as an exhibition, and you can have a project which is a mechanism that allows residents in the neighborhood to get house improvements without paying. Okay, and that's an art project done by artists, and that's an art project done by artists.
Which you've done.
That's true. We have time for about 3 more questions. You're next. And catch my eye if you want one.
Hi, I'm Regine Basha, and I met you before, and I wanted to meet you many times, Reem. Thank you so much for doing this. I'm glad to hear that you're considering posting it online. I had one suggested, maybe to send it to Creative Time and ask them if they would post it on their website too. And I think it's very important, the work you do. I've been following it, and my hope is that it becomes contagious. And I think through what I see as a methodology question, not necessarily is it art, is it not art. It's really a matter of what we're discussing here is a methodology. I think that, again, with the right kinds of energies behind it, the hope is that these things start to get sort of viral. One thing I wanted to mention, it came to mind, we're talking about these terms, communities, and again, I get very tired in a way with the community action term, because I feel in some ways what we need to do really, and I say we because I'm like part of the diasporic version of what you're doing in the region, I feel like the work is almost like disarticulating communities. sometimes communities is the limitation, in fact. When we speak about, Arabs and how they feel about Israel, I mean, myself as an Arab Jew, my parents are from Iraq, they identify as Iraqis. There are Palestinian Christians I'm very close with. There are Muslim Lebanese who call themselves Phoenicians. There are, there are just so many characters in this play of the region that has this enormous history of shifting identities and conquering lands and whatnot, that I feel like, yes, what is the next set of terms that we're going to deal with here? I mean, how are we going to actually build new language, in fact, so that we can, to excuse the expression, but be the change we want to be, make the change. So in a sense, I feel like, language is a big part of it. How can we disarticulate the terms that have been given to us, that we've inherited through our families, through the governments, through the nationality projects all across the region? How can we sort of navigate through that? Anyway, it's just I'm putting it out there. I don't know what the answer is.
It's completely, I completely identify with what you're saying. I mean, we're constantly dealing with the terminology that is missing, that is not accurate enough, that it's not, I think, it became even more clear now that we are doing what we are doing. And I think it's, you're right that it's shared. I mean, it's not, we are in contact with other art organizations that work in similar conditions to what we are doing, and it's a shared problem, because you find yourself, using the same kind of definitions and terms that don't really fit to what you're doing, and it's not only a problem of terminology, it's also a problem of criteria of evaluation, of trying to understand, how to evaluate what you do, what is the criteria, in terms of your sponsors, and in terms of the community, and in terms of the artists that are involved. So all these kind of questions are completely, they are with us all the time, and it's an ongoing process of redefining them.
I mean, for me, it's more about like getting down to the actions and worrying about the terminology later, because it will come. With sustained actions and sustained build-up, we'll find the right name, I'm sure of that. For example, again, going back to sort of liminal spaces and how things have developed, some of the architects that were involved with us on this project were Alessandro Petti and Sandy Hilal, and we were involved with them in liminal spaces. They started to do a lot of projects, and then soon after, like a year or so after, they came to me and they were like, we were approached by Eyal Weitzman about, doing this project together, decolonizing architecture, and, starting this topic that we share all of these ideas with, and what do you think, can we do it? Is it possible? He's an Israeli, and I was like, do it. Just go, do it, move on. You want a community out of liminal space, and you want an actual project that is still there and doing stuff that is absolutely mind-boggling fantastic, and doing stuff in the camps, in refugee camps, and doing stuff in settlements and in many structures inside Palestine, in a collaborative format with many other internationals, Israelis, and residencies, and students, and universities, and is international also in its, it's reaching to Goldsmiths in London, and multiple universities are involved in it. Go to decolonizing architecture. And now it has a term. It also has a logic, decolonizing architecture. It took 3 kind of whimsy projects talking about urbanity and architecture and segregation to come to a terminology. Decolonization, fantastic. Applied on the ground. Taking motivation as a source of ideas. And they started out with a fantastic project, which is when settlements are evacuated. Not the premise that the settlements will be evacuated. The Israeli settlements will be evacuated. How would you reuse them in the Palestinian land and in the Palestinian cities? Fantastic, because I think nobody disagrees on the fact that settlements should not stay. They should not stay. They were a tool that was fabricated in the late 70s by even Sharon, and Sharon was the wise one to say, this is the first thing I'll give up. And he was the first one to give it up in Gaza. He understands it was a political tool, but it's not meant for viability. In Israeli laws, it's not a legal structure forever, to stay forever. So looking at the facts on the ground, you start to ask yourself the right questions, and you move ahead with it in an intelligent kind of way. And this is where art can do a lot of things.
Yeah, it's not only about the issue of terminological, it's also identifying where is the right place to focus, because the issue of settlements and the issue of the wall. I mean, the wall is like, I think, the biggest focus in the world of artistic activity. You have so many initiatives to deal with the separation wall. They come, they paint it, they do different. They play tennis on both sides, they do anything.
Sculptures.
Everything, okay? Besides, asking the real question, okay, when it will be broken, okay, what will we do with it? Okay, how will you deal with that when eventually it will happen? So you have to assume, you have to really be focused on where to put your efforts.
My name is Stephen Maddock. I guess my question is that if we move from, as you're talking about, the symbolic regime of art to art in its task of social action, if we think about the realpolitik of the situation, maybe I'll ask you, Eyal. We're talking about a Netanyahu government which is about to be re-elected, supposedly by an overwhelming majority. So my question is, understanding the significance of expression that you were talking about, or the boycott, to raise awareness, can you talk about the actual political efficacy of the boycott and how it can move forward? You gave the example of South Africa before, but considering the real situation on the ground, what do you think?
Well, I think one of the problems with the boycott is maybe that it is immediately linked to South Africa. And that is that when you talk about a boycott, you immediately make this comparison between Israel and South Africa, and you in a way block the whole possibility of talking about the boycott and how the boycott can be effective. I think we should maybe separate between the two terms, and we should leave South Africa aside from it. We should relate to apartheid as a term, as an independent term. Okay, South Africa was one example. Okay, and you can see if Israel is an apartheid state, if it has some aspects of an apartheid state, you can start relate to it and then you can ask yourself whether a boycott is as an effective tool against apartheid. Okay, in the specific case of Israel. So I think when you're talking about the boycott, how it within real politics within Israel, okay? At the moment, it's completely blocked when you're talking about the boycott. It's like there is no room for discussion, okay? It's like black and white, you're either with us or against us, okay? And this is in many cases how the boycott works, but at the same time, it's not serving its goal. So that's why I think, if you're asking me whether a boycott is an efficient political tool within Israel to change the Israeli political situation. It's not, okay? It's not because, first of all, and I think that's even the case if I do contradict myself and go back to South Africa for a minute. I think a cultural boycott in South Africa was not the case. I think that eventually what was making the difference is more economical, and maybe even more, I think, the fact that the United States adopted it at some point. Well, so that's why I think it's important, but I think it's important in as long as it really enables discussion, enables and increases awareness. As long as it's we're talking constantly about responsibility. Okay, so there is responsibility also in practicing the boycott, and as an Israeli and as someone running an Israeli institution, I think then the issue of boycott is completely different. I mean, for us, it's all about as long as we are there, as long as we are Israeli citizens, the boycott is not a tool for us. We have other tools. We have the tools of using, the privilege we have, the budget we have, I would say it's our duty to use them in order to try and influence and to work from within. So it's like two different tools used by different people, but they're not separated. Okay, we should have this kind of.
I mean, for me, in terms of efficacy of the boycott, I think it's a very effective tool because, nobody understands this better than the Israelis in terms of lobbying, right? And lobbying is one creative effort of, hey, do you hear me? This is my ideas and this is what I want, and you gotta make it happen. You've gotta make it happen. And you keep on repeating it until that person thinks he wants to make it happen, so he makes it happen for you. And I think this is what the boycott is. It's raising awareness about injustices that are happening and just saying, no, I don't want to be a part of that system. In terms of, let's put it this way, if we go back to the very recent, the fact that the Palestinians came onto the UN for the non-member status as a state, and the voting, who stood by Israel with no, a vote against no? For the very first time in recent history, you saw that it was, there was a real, it was basically the US only that supports Israel on this, and it is really standing on its own when in a large voice of who condones the fact that people don't want the right for self-determination for the Palestinians and an end of occupation. It has to start to come to being on a large, and this was a cultural, this was just a symbolic cultural thing. We're not a state. You go there and you know that. There's no makings for a state. They're not paying salaries in Palestine. It's just a chaos. So it's a symbolic thing. It's a symbolic win. So for that to actually have happened is a way to expose those politics. And I think that's where the boycott becomes a very effective tool.
Great. Last question goes to the front row.
Thank you both. I think it's important to draw attention to the fact that boycotts are really complex things, right? And they affect people both individually, personally, and kind of as a community or nation in many different ways. I was just I was talking to some artists and curators who are from South Africa who grew up during apartheid, and there was a cultural boycott. And I think that they were in support of it, but it also meant that they weren't able to see art and culture from many different places outside of their country. And so, I think that you also have to think about how that affects, that effect too, right? You never really kind of think about that effect as an individual artist or practitioner of art or of culture. I think there's that dimension that also gets left out of these conversations too, right? It's not necessarily a win.
But I just want to give just a counter very quickly. It's with the occupation, the Palestinians are actually not allowed to travel or see anything. There are plenty of Picassos in Israel. Nobody's allowed to see them. They had to bring one sole Picasso to come into Palestine, make a big deal out of it, for people to be able to see that. And we're not even talking about Israeli art here.
Yeah, no. So I'm just saying, I think it's, we have to be careful about using South Africa as an example. I think we have to kind of treat each case, explore the context and the merits of each case. I also had my broader question is about kind of thinking about the institution of art and what you guys did in terms of working from institutions or initiatives to build infrastructure and kind of thinking about this project, Liminal Spaces, as an art project, and thinking about where else these relationships or these networks could have been built if it weren't within the institution of art, or if it weren't within art. I kind of asked this question too because I work on an initiative at the New Museum called the Museumist Hub, which is kind of about building this network between art spaces in different parts of the world. And I really see models like yours is kind of an early precedent and example, that has kind of become institutionalized much more formally in other places too. So I don't know if it's a question, but maybe just kind of a comment to kind of contextualize how it is really relevant to our current situation and conversations in contemporary now.
I mean, I would just say that, there's no it's not an institutional form. It came very organically and very much, with people coming together on the same kind of turf and understanding as we highlighted. How it started to set up and play out is very natural. And at the same time, yeah, it's interesting to see how places of, I want to say, human emergency bring out the best in you when you want to really look at that and harness it. So what is really lacking, and this is an unfortunate thing, is the institutionalization of these efforts. That is lacking. You know why there is no prosperity in such moments? It's because there is no institutionalization. What does institutionalization mean? It means creating documents and historicizing these actions. Creating a place where you can say, these are the edifices that will carry that legacy forward. That doesn't exist. So I find it very unfortunate, but we've had to do these platforms of discussion. It's been 8 years. It's a long time ago. But and especially dealing with contemporary art, it is a long time ago. But we've had to go back to it because now we can't do such efforts. It's very hard to do that. And I find it very interesting that, for example, within the Palestinian territories, they are still doing that model of tours in buses and taking places and going to see, but they don't refer to it as, the precedents being liminal spaces or Ruwat biennial. And it's an unfortunate thing that these historical moments are forgotten. I would salute institutional efforts to think about how these things can really stay and continue. And Digital Art Lab does that, and I think, other efforts should be taken into that.
Yeah, but you have to remember that in the specific case of liminal spaces, the institution was really, it was the infrastructure. It was instrumentalized completely. I mean, it's important to have had it, of course, but it's not. It's not that it could really, and it's, beside what Reem just said, it's not that important, because what is really important is the fact that it, that it could happen, okay? So it enabled it, so it was a tool. You have, for example, we had, I don't remember when, if it was during Liminal Spaces or afterwards, we had a project that was involving only meetings, okay? No production, just meetings and every few months between artists and curators from different countries in the Middle East. And it was, it was never made public. It was completely, just in enabling this to happen. And you needed, I mean, the institutions that enabled it were there, but they were completely invisible. It couldn't have happened elsewhere. So I think in the specific circumstances of what is happening now, that's the only way it can happen. And the knowledge and the archiving of it is happening within the limitation. It's not that it's not there. I mean, we constantly talk about the knowledge that we gained through this project. That's why we also published this reader that is, in a way, it's not a catalog of the art project. It's a reader, and the participating artists contributed sometimes with text. So it's all about this gain knowledge about how you do such a thing. So you are doing it within the possibilities.
But I mean, my point is really that there has been, there unfortunately, and this is, I don't want to pinpoint everything on the occupation or anything, but this kind of historical amnesia or erasure that happens is constant due to the fact that you don't have stable events, right? So you don't have an accumulation of memory that makes you go into progress and development further. So that's, at least in the Palestinian case, that's the situation, in my personal experience. We don't have the possibilities of creating a build-up where you channel that development further ahead in time. And those are, for me, for example, that idea of like the no spaces not living out in institutional memory and historical memory. And there's no one institution. PACA doesn't exist anymore. The academy still does, but within its merits, it's very limited in what it can do, and so forth. I mean, it just finds itself always, suffering from that erasure.
Thanks a lot. I just want to thank really quickly our panelists, Reem, Fadda, and Eyal, Danon, and also artists who brought Eyal here so that this conversation was possible. Stay, have a glass of wine, keep the conversation going. Thank you very much for coming.